They're young, they're cool, they're vampires. They're the Lost Boys, and they're a scream. Bring home the movie that made it hip to be a vampire. Now on video cassette, The Lost Boys.
Welcome to Roll Credits, a podcast about connections, both in film and in life. I'm Aaron.
I'm Mandy.
Each episode, we aim to explore a cast member, actor, director, or even a concept that ties a set of movies together. We talk about the history, the context of a movie, and we have a lot of fun while discussing our own personal movie opinions.
I'm so fucking excited for this one.
I'm so excited. So we are in the middle of our Joel Schumacher arc. We are covering in this episode The Lost Boys. Before we get to that, this is an Armbar Studios production. For more information on all of our projects, you can visit armbarstudios.com. And again, this is part of our Joel Schumacher project, our arc. This is the second Joel Schumacher movie that we're going to be covering in this arc. We did St. Elmo's Fire last time. This time it's The Lost Boys, and we're also going to be following up with Falling Down, Batman Forever, The Phantom of the Opera, and The Number 23.
And before we get into the history for The Lost Boys, which there's actually not a whole lot between this and St. Elmo's Fire, because this was back-to-back years.
Back-to-back, which is incredible to me. Wow.
But
we'll talk about that.
Before I get into that, I actually want to bring up something about our last episode, St. Elmo's Fire. So a friend of ours, James, he has his own
podcast.
Yes, friend of the podcast. He has his own podcast called The Last Slice of Pizza. It's a Teen Titans recap podcast. So he actually contacted us about the latest episode to tell us that... we mentioned a few times in the episode that St. Elmo's Fire was mentioned in the song 1985 by Bowling for Soup. Here's the thing that he wanted to bring to our attention. So 1985 by Bowling for Soup, a song that most people know and received a lot of radio play, is not the original version.
Yeah, this blew my mind for a lot of reasons. One, the original version was by a band called SR-71. And that was
2 months before.
2 months before Bowling for Soup. They gave Bowling for Soup this song. And let's just say that while listening to that original version, we made some discoveries. So
in the Bowling for Soup version, first verse, pretty much the same. Second verse, onward. Differences start with the exact verse that we kept quoting. So in the Bowling for Soup version, it goes, she's seen all the classics, she knows every line, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, even St. Elmo's Fire, which is, kind of a stretch for a rhyme, but it works.
Yeah, it has enough jams that we're like, okay, because that's what we thought the line was.
Then you listen to the SR-17 version, and it goes, she's seen all the classics at least 100 times, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Fast Times at Ridgemont High?
Yeah, that's a completely different movie. And it actually makes a lot more sense to me with that original lyric because, look, I think that St. Elmo's Fire is enough of, a quote-unquote classic, but it's not Fast Times at Ridgemont High. That is a step down.
Bowling for Soup is like, fuck you, no.
Yeah, okay.
They're like, yeah, you're wrong, we hate Fast Times. We are hardcore St. Elmo's
at Ridgemont High.
There was no reason really for them to change it other than, I guess it was probably like a joke on St. Elmo's Fire's behalf if I had to take a guess.
Yeah,
that's how it comes across.
It
even St. Elmo's Fire, even the dog shit ones is what they're saying.
Yeah.
I don't believe that about St. Elmo's Fire, but
But that's something really interesting about, because the Bowling for Soup version always had kind of this sarcastic edge to it. You're listening to it because that's what the song is. That's what 1985 is. However, listening to the SR-71 version has been absolutely fascinating. Are you going to go through all the differences?
No.
Okay.
I can't go through everything.
But can we talk about how different the song is then?
Yes, it is. It is more of like a character study.
Yeah.
It's like listening to a Mandela Effect alternate universe version of this song.
Yeah, it is so weird because there's a lot that sounds about right or sounds about the same. It's the craziest part is that this Bowling for Soup version, basically the original version is a little more sarcastic, but also a lot kind of sadder. They're both a little sarcastic, but the Bowling for Soup one is all about music still on MTV is still a line in both. But there's a line very specifically, it's the bridge, where Bowling for Soup's version talks about, Ozzy Osbourne, when did Ozzy become an actor? Which, at the time, and I remember this, was kind of a big, I don't want to say a joke, but definitely a point in the cultural kind of conversation because of Keeping Up with the Osbournes. So, it was like, oh, what happened to Ozzy? Now he's an actor. I remember people talking about that. And that's not even referenced in the original SR-71 version, where it's much more about Debbie kind of just like looking back at her life where, and this is kind of in the bridge has the punchline, the rubber broke, which is, basically she got pregnant at a young age at 24, which basically like scuppered a lot of her like life dreams. She wanted to have like, the 80s movie romance with the high school football team captain and this. And now she's kind of stuck as sort of a middle-aged woman, just not happy. Whereas the Bowling for Soup version, there's definitely that element, but it is much more of a, like, the good old days. It's a weird thing because they both have this, but it's like these little changes that completely change, like, I guess the tone of the song.
There's a version, so the Bowling for Soup version of it removes this line that immediately comes after the Wham reference, that immediately references George Michael?
Yeah, George Michael.
George Michael.
Head of Wham. She walks out to Wham, not a big Dune Biscuit fan. And then in the Bowling for Soup version, it's thought she'd get a hand as a member of Duran Duran. Whereas in the SR-71, it's didn't know George was gay, thought they'd hook up one day.
It's one of those things that when you hear it, it feels like, yeah, this is probably how that verse should have gone. It's kind of like when you first learn that the Elvis song Falling in Love, Can't Help Falling in Love with You, was originally written for like a woman's perspective. So there's a lot of parts that don't exactly rhyme with falling in love with you because it wasn't written to be falling in love with you. It was written to be falling in love with him.
Now, obviously, thanks to The Conjuring 2, we have a very deep connection with the Elvis Presley version. But, you're absolutely right. And this is so weird because, it really is the SR-71 version is just kind of this desperate plea of like, this sort of like, damn, I just want my life to be better. Why does time have to keep marching forward? And then the Bowling for Soup version there's a little bit of that. And then they just start going like, yeah, man,
Remember the 80s?
Remember the 80s? It's super weird.
Well, we got to make this more marketable, guys. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
SR-71, y'all made your shit way too depressing.
Yeah. So I just want to say, that is not all that we've done and, listen to 1985, though. I want to say, I was playing Neon White, great game, as we were listening to the two different versions of 1985, and I'm just like jamming to 1985 as I'm like blasting away demons and jumping across ledges, and it is the weirdest thing because I went back to that level to like get a higher score on it, and in my head I was like doing the entire level to the beat of the song. I was like, yes, okay, and this is the other thing, I was singing the chorus, and that's the other thing. So as a kid. And this really, so,
Did you know that if you play SR-71 over Neon White, it actually syncs up?
Yeah, absolutely.
Dark Side of Neon White.
The Dark Side of Neon White. No.
The Dark Side of 1985.
So, the chorus. The chorus of 1985. In the SR-71 version, it says, Bruce Springsteen, Madonna, way before Nirvana. They in the Bowling for Soup version, they only say Springsteen. As a kid, I never heard Springsteen. In my head, I always heard it as Stacy, so I guess I always thought that there was some 80s singer called Stacy, which there was. There was Stacy Q. So, like, it's not like it didn't make sense. I knew there was, like, a one-hit wonder called Stacy Q. So I was like, oh, yes, of course. Stacy Madonna. No, it's Springsteen.
They were actually just they were predicting Stacy's mom.
Yeah, that's the other thing, because that song was also covered by Bowling for Soup.
Also named Stacy, I guess.
Yeah, and decently popular. at the time. So I guess in my head I was like, oh yeah, of course.
Stacey's mom wasn't covered by Bowling for Soup.
They did cover it, but it's not the one that got radio play.
Okay, I was going to say, please don't tell me that I'm wrong about this too.
No.
Okay.
No. That's another one. Another band, I guess, gave Bowling for Soup. Did you write your own shit ever? We're gonna find out that all the bad guys want was a Less Than Jake song or some shit.
Since when did Bowling for Soup write their own songs?
Please make time stop.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I'm sorry. Okay, one last thing about 1985.
They wrote the Sonic Unleashed song.
Good.
Yeah.
No. One last thing about 1985. In the bridge, whatever happened to sitcoms, game shows on the Radio 1, that was the Bowling for Soup part. As a kid, that made sense. But that only made sense to me because I went to England every year, where they have BBC Radio 1. Also, sitcoms and game shows were still a thing in the 90s and thousands. What the fuck? Why did they change that line other than to make it less depressing and more, nostalgia focused?
I think you just answered your own question.
It's so weird, but it's like a really just inexplicable fucking thing. Anyway.
So that was just so that's our intro for this week. A little crazy dissection of
I was
a
going to
song
talk
that we
about all
absolutely
the
weren't
great
expecting.
movies we watched. I was going to talk about all the fun we've been having, and instead we went on a digression about 1985.
You know what? As much as I love that, I do have a plan for later on in the year. We can talk about some of that stuff.
Hell yeah.
Is there any that you want to specifically shout out?
Honestly, we just watched some good movies. We talk about them. Check out Mandy's Letterboxd.
Check out Aaron's Letterboxd.
Thank you. I only review my horror movies. Anyway, I just want to say, speaking of horror movies, let's segue this into discussing the movie that we will be talking about today. That's right, everybody. It is The Lost Boys.
All right.
So that is a 1986 movie.
Yes.
Came out 1 year after St. Elmo's Fire. And is the daring and beautiful story of a young man, Jason Patrick, who is new in town in the town of Santa Carla, California.
It's a 1987 movie, actually.
Oh, well, fuck me. But anyway, he's new in the murder capital of the world. And he gets in with the wrong crowd, a group of vampires led by the enigmatic and alluring David, played by Kiefer Sutherland. So, we love this movie.
I love the shit out of this movie. I want to talk about my personal history before we get into the review. But before I get into that one, I actually want to go over the history for this one.
Sure, tell me all about it.
So, on top of an Empire Online, IndieWire, and a couple Blogspot interviews and articles, I actually listened to the full director's commentary on this one. There wasn't really much from the big sit-down interview on this movie that I used for St. Elmo's Fire, surprisingly. Mostly he talked about how the main actor, Jason Patrick, actually stepped away from Hollywood after this, but Joel kept in touch with him.
Oh.
So directly following St. Elmo's Fire, Joel had another instance here where a film basically fell into his lap again, a lot like The Incredible Shrinking Woman and The Wiz. So this one was a script for a kids' movie. Originally set to be directed by none other than Superman and Goonies director Richard Donner.
Oh, wow.
Yep. It was originally envisioned as a G-rated adventure for young kids in the same spirit as the Goonies, called The Lost Boys. So just around this time, Richard Donner actually got the opportunity to make the film Lethal Weapon instead, so he backed the hell out of this one.
Oh, man. Hey, listen. This is a good timeline divergence. Lethal Weapon's way more fun. This movie, holy shit.
And then the next person it was handed off to was director Mary Lambert, who at the time was mostly known for directing music videos of some of Madonna's most famous songs. Her most famous film, however, was 1989's Pet Sematary.
Oh, man.
Anyways,
listen, you can't say it isn't a classic as much as we love to,
Yeah, some people really love that movie.
We just thought it was funny.
I have some...
I love child murder.
Okay, we're going to clip that. We're going to post that on the YouTube. Post that on the TikTok.
You killed a child. Congratulations. This is why you're the best.
Anyways, needless to say, she dropped out too. It was then handed over to Joel. So the story here, Donner's wife, Lauren Schuler, was the producer on St. Elmo's Fire. So Lauren had actually suggested Joel to her husband as somebody to take over for this film.
Okay.
So Joel read the script, and his first thought was he was going to reject it. It was a kid's movie. He didn't really want to do kids' movies. And then he was told that he had free reign to mess with the script, so he came on board with it. Under Joel Schumacher, he decided he wanted to age it up, make it more adult, which is a gamble that probably should not have paid off at all, but it did.
Yeah, that's genuinely incredible.
When you think on it, really, the only leftover from that version is the characters of the Frog Brothers and, maybe Sam. They're kind of like the younger members of the cast there.
And it works.
Yeah, no, like, it works well with them. Apparently, the Frog Brothers were initially envisioned as just kind of chubby 8-year-olds.
Okay, fair enough.
I feel like the Frog Brothers and Sam in the final version add a lot of charm to the film. They do feel a little at odds with the rest of the story, you could argue, but, it's everything that's in the final version, I think, makes sense. They made the right decision leaving their characters as is.
Absolutely.
Just making them like a little older, a little different.
Yeah. I'm sure we'll go into detail about that.
So, continuing in this trend of Joel being modest about his early work, with regards to the Lost Boys, he said that they didn't really know what they were doing, and they made it up as they went along, and that the student was extremely patient with him.
Aww.
It's crazy to think, but at the time, Jason Patric, the lead star, Kiefer Sutherland, and Corey Haim were all considered unknowns at the time.
It is really funny because... that's something that I think this movie gets a lot of is like people joking about the two Coreys,
I wanted to talk about the two Coreys in this,
okay.
But it is insane to me because he was the person who helped complete the Brat Pack, and then also later on went on to make the first movie with the two Coreys. Like, he is kind of the innovator of like. He's like the innovator of kids in the 80s, girl like Walls for like I don't know.
Joel Schumacher, the Forrest Gump of the Bowling for Soup songs.
Now, this is why he deserved the shout out in 1985. Honestly, SR-71, they were wrong. Joel had said that he had a lot of doubters at the studio because. He said that a lot of people there believe that you couldn't blend comedy and horror, which I got to be honest. I think he might be gussying up the story just a little bit. That feels kind of BS to me.
Yeah,
this was 1987, right?
Yeah,
let's take into account that Evil Dead 2, Monster Squad, and the 80s Little Shop of Horror all came out within a year of this, so they couldn't have used that as reference. They still had Fright Night, they had Reanimator, Return of the Living Dead, Gremlins, An American Werewolf in London. That's just the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, you look back even further, like the Rocky Horror Picture Show, The Blob, Abbott and Costello, Meet Frankenstein, all of that stuff was like smash successes.
Yeah. But you know what? I'll let Joel exaggerate just a little bit if he wants. He's earned it.
Yeah. So they had picked Santa Cruz as the location for this movie. In Joel's own words, he said, "When I got there, I thought, this is exactly where you'd want to go if you were a teenage vampire, because you got the boardwalk, the beach, a lot of transient young people, a lot of drug people, and runaway kids all over the place. Mm-hmm. Santa Cruz had more murders per capita than anywhere else in the United States. There was a murder outside of our hotel while we were preparing this movie." Now, you may ask, because you mentioned that this movie takes place in Santa Carla, not Santa Cruz.
Mm-hmm.
Santa Carla is a fictional California city.
Yes.
The Santa Cruz Tourism Department told them that they either had to change the name of the city in the movie or they couldn't use the boardwalk.
Oh, man. Okay, well, they made the right choice.
Yes. But that was like absolutely insane. I guess it but their reasoning for it was that they just didn't want to be associated with teen violence.
Well, maybe they shouldn't have become the murder capital of the world. Makes
Listen,
you think.
Listen. We'll allow murder, but we draw the line at teen violence. Once the movie was finished, test screenings went great. During the beach massacre scene that happens, a bunch of surf punks actually began tearing up the theater in joy. Joel enthusiastically talks about this story. Other scenes were getting such hard laughs that they actually had to extend scenes to make up for it.
Because they had to, like, pause the laughter?
Yeah, like, especially
like,
near the
let
end.
It play out.
Where they were killing off all the vampires. You might have noticed there was a few sequences with punchlines, and then they give some times for the audience to laugh. Like that was because things were moving a little too fast in the finale.
Yeah, okay, fair enough.
Joel has said that after this, he always wanted to make another vampire movie and just never been approached for one.
Oh.
He did talk about wanting to make a follow-up to this movie, featuring biker vampire ladies called the Lost Girls. He had basically pitched this movie for a decade, and it never got off the ground.
Oh, that is heartbreaking, because you know that would play right now. That would play so well right now.
So somebody make this movie.
I mean...
He wanted Drew Barrymore and Rosanna Arquette as the two leads here.
Oh my god.
Beyond that, he actually had one more idea for a Lost Boys follow-up.
Yeah.
It was actually a prequel with young vampire rebels set in the early 1900s around the 1906 San Francisco earthquake.
Man, why did they not let Joel cook more? This is a travesty.
It's pretty BS, I can't lie. And then there are two direct-to-DVD sequels that I hear are really bad.
Yeah, It's really funny because I was in Walmart the other day, and I saw The Lost Boys trilogy, and I'm like, is it though? Don't know if I want to buy that.
The initial sequel was apparently originally just a movie about a group of surfer werewolves that the studio read and said, well, we can't make this. This is basically just The Lost Boys already. And then they stopped and said, hold on, this is just The Lost Boys already.
Oh, so okay, it's an American Psycho 2 situation.
So we're just going to rewrite this as a Lost Boys movies, right? And then they said, yeah, and then they got the other Coreys, back for it.
Oh my god.
Schumacher has been on record saying that it should not have been made, so I didn't even want to entertain watching it for this.
Yeah, no.
But yeah, that's basically all the notes that I had on the Lost Boys production.
So basically, went well. Things, people had a good time. They played it by the seat of their pants. There was murder.
And although St. Elmo's Fire had a lot of, had a cult following, The Lost Boys really was Joel stepping up in a lot of the critics' eyes, I would believe.
Now, it's interesting you mentioned that. Because we're in this interesting kind of thing. Something I pointed out last time was that Siskel and Ebert in the segment, the At the Movies at the Time segment, they both criticized the directing of St. Elmo's Fire, a critique that we didn't understand. Normally I'd probably do the physical release first, but I think it makes more sense. Let's dive now into the reviews of the time, since you brought that up. Because I have some interesting quotes here.
Go ahead.
The episode of At the Movies that this took place on, and again, thank you so much to SiskelEbert.org. You are doing the Lord's work by categorizing all this stuff. Thank you so much. The episode that this was on also had Made to Order, Stakeout, The American Friend, The Fringe Dwellers, and The Living Daylights.
I've never heard of half of those.
Yeah.
It wasn't the best time for movies.
Well, it wasn't the best lineup, at least for that week. However, I believe they liked. I can't remember which one they liked, unfortunately, but that's what they covered on the episode. But yeah, so this was actually technically, this isn't at the movies. This was Siskel and Ebert and the movies, which I believe was the Disney era. I have to remember because I know it goes sneak previews. I'll have to reread this. I read a really great book that kind of goes through all of their eras. But this was Siskel and Ebert and the movies. And I know that because at the start of the episode, they have the little, hey, this is what's coming up on Siskel and Ebert and the movies. And so it was kind of just a fun little fun fact. So, this is what they said.
So I see Siskel. I see Ebert. Who is and the movie?
So, this movie, Ebert called it ambitious.
Okay.
Said, a very ambitious, well-acted horror movies. This movie follows a trend I've been noticing where the sensational storylines of 1950s exploitation movies are updated with good dialogue and production values and made into slick movies for the 1980s. Kiefer Sutherland stars as the leader of the vampires, and it's a good, tough performance. It's a well-made movie, and a lot of that has to do with Joel Schumacher. So that's a huge difference from St. Elmo's Fire, where they were talking so much crap on this guy. However, he does go on to say, he should also take the blame for what happens to the movie, where a lot of the early human elements make way for action and gore in the third reel. It's a close miss, but I'm going to have to give it a thumbs down because it doesn't live up to its original promise. Siskel also said it was an overstuffed picture, lots of interesting setup, but by the third act I'm exhausted. It's a picture I could have liked. And Ebert says, it's a strange criticism to say a movie is too ambitious, but it has good performances and good actors.
Man, I'm just going to be honest. Yeah, you almost had it.
Yeah, here's the thing. I can almost agree if you're really, really, really into the setup. Because the setup is unmatched. And we'll talk about that. It has some of the most gorgeous atmosphere. And I have a lot to say about the actual happenings in the movie. But I actually think that the action finale is fun. Like, I don't know. I like all the moving parts. They talk a lot about how, to them, there are too many moving parts. There's like, the mother and the head vampire and, the video store owner and I get it. There are a lot of moving parts. There's Star, there's Laddie, there's David, there's, and I think that you could make this movie leaner, but I think that by making it leaner, you lose the enduring appeal. And I think we're going to talk about that. But I just want to point out here that this is a movie where it feels like this is the first time where they realized Joel Schumacher has something.
Yes.
He has an eye. He has a creative eye. He makes beautiful films, interesting films. And I think even though they both gave this a thumbs down, there were a lot of thumbs downs this episode. I think that this is where they first really start to realize that they've been too harsh on him. And also they realize that he is something, that he has something worth kind of keeping an eye out for in their eyes.
I'm just so disappointed. Like, I understand to an extent that they were saying positive things here. But also, man, like, I just think that Siskel and Ebert got, if you want to point towards 1 year of people saying that Siskel and Ebert hate horror movies, 1987 was it. Like, that's the reason why. Because that year had this movie, that year had Hellraiser, and that year they also had A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors. I've not seen the Siskel and Ebert episode for that one, but I know for a fact that Ebert rated it 1.5 stars.
Oh my God. The movie's great. I love that movie. And that's the thing. We'll often fight against the perception that they hated horror, because they didn't. But it becomes tough to argue, or it becomes easy to understand why people say these things when you look at 1987 and you have Hellraiser, their review that I completely disagree with, like, wholeheartedly. Or what they say on The Lost Boys, which is a lot more nuanced. But
I think the most positive review they gave to what is considered a horror classic is probably Evil Dead 2.
Yeah.
At the very least, I know Ebert liked that one.
Yes, yeah. He's very positive on that one. It's kind of funny, well, they love Reanimator. They both loved Reanimator. But, that's what I'm saying is, like, you look at around this era and it's like, I think that combined with the Video Nasties clip, which always goes around, you can understand where the perception came. Even if I don't agree with it, it is tough to, it's tough to argue sometimes. To kind of transition a little bit, talking about horror classics, one thing we talked about last episode was that St. Elmo's Fire only ever really got just sort of a standard Blu-ray release, or that's where it's up to right now. But you can tell that this movie has endured, then stood the test of time, because how we watched it, which is probably the best way right now to watch this movie, is on an absolutely gorgeous 4K Ultra HD disc. Plus, it also has a Blu-ray version that includes a lot of extras too. It is not the first version of this movie that we've ever owned, because you went out and bought it on a double-sided full screen / widescreen DVD.
So, funny enough, my first exposure to The Lost Boys was actually the Bart Simpson's Dracula skit in Treehouse of Horror. As a kid, I was looking that stuff up, and they said the part where the boys are floating outside the window, Bart and Milhouse and all them, was a reference to The Lost Boys. I don't know if it was, thinking on it, because that doesn't really... I think, like, all they have to say is... kid vampires floating out the windows. I guess that makes sense technically. But, I picked this one up because of that. And I picked it up right before a road trip. I remember watching this on a portable DVD player. I also picked up the recently released Beowulf movie and the Nintendo DS game Little Red Riding Hood's Zombie Barbecue. Now, I remember I watched this, and then I never touched that Beowulf DVD. I still own it.
Yep, it's right there. It's actually behind me as we record in our cursed DVD shelf, which is a thing that we have. But I want to talk a little bit about that UHD release. Obviously it has the commentary by Joel Schumacher. It looks amazing. It absolutely looks amazing, which is great because it's a movie that really benefits because it's a gorgeous movie. Very pretty menu screen. A lot of people can critique, and I think, you're one of them. Some people do critique the cover that they gave to this version. Just for not being as good as the regular poster, I understand. But it's basically them in silhouette hanging from the bridge. I think it looks really good on the menu screen. I think it's like very vibrant.
I like it enough. I'd think that I would like it to be a reversible cover.
Yeah. And the ambient music's really good. And so the Blu-ray, it comes with a Blu-ray that has more features, because the UHD is just the movie and the commentary, because that's kind of all they could fit, But the Blu-ray comes with 5 retrospective vignettes, deleted and extended scenes, theatrical trailers, and something called multi-angle video commentary by Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, and Jameson Newlander. So basically the Kid and the Frog Brothers. Where they kind of go through those scenes and are like reacting to their scenes in the movie and telling kind of set stories. It's a bit of a fluff piece, but it's fun. So, really, you're going to get everything that you want to get from this release. I can absolutely recommend it. It really does look and sound great. Now, keep in mind, I'm using a plasma TV from 2012, and we don't have any kind of surround going or any sound bars. But you know what? It looked good to me.
I just want to say, it's funny that you mention that we own the Blu-ray copy. There is actually an easier way to watch this right now. Tubi dropped this pretty recently, and as far as I could tell, it was the featured movie on Tubi last I checked. Now, that could be because we have been watching The Lost Boys. We talk about The Lost Boys, that they decided to recommend it to us because,
Everything's listening to you.
Everything's listening to you.
No, it's because of our influence. They knew we were going to cover it, and they're like, well, God, we got to have marketing synergy with roll credits.
Either way, yeah, if you want to watch this movie, I would highly recommend it. Mm-hmm. I love the shit out of this movie. And that would be if you don't want to spend money on like the full Blu-ray, Tubi is free with ads. It's worth it. Absolutely worth it.
Absolutely. Check it out. So, let's talk about the movie.
So, did you know that the main actor, Jason Patric, he is actually the grandson of Jackie Gleason.
I did not know that. That is extremely cool. Jackie Gleason, of course, Minnesota Fats.
Yeah, it almost makes me wish that the grandpa in this movie was Minnesota Fats. That'd be pretty good.
Can you imagine?
The one way to improve grandpa.
Yeah, the one way to improve an already good character, make him played by Jackie Gleason, just so we could make the Minnesota Fats jokes. Love The Hustler. Great movie.
Anyways, so we open... I like to talk about the opening to these movies.
Oh, yes.
For comparison's sake.
Yes.
So, this one has a absolutely beautiful shot of the California water with Cry Little Sister. I am immediately hit with incredible vibes.
Oh, man.
Best vibes of literally any movie that we've watched for the podcast up until this point.
Yeah, you want to talk about a movie that gets its claws into you from the first frame. Cry Little Sister as this plays, unreal. Like, it's the shot of the moon in the California ocean, like flickering. And again, you want to talk about how beautiful this transfer looks. The white and the blue and the blacks are just so deep, and the song is playing. Cry Little Sister is such a beautiful song, and we are so lucky that it plays multiple times during this movie.
So, I know that Joel had a hand in the soundtracks for majority of his films. Probably not Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah. Well,
he probably had to stick with all the songs there, but...
There is one original song, and I know that, but we'll talk about
it. I actually didn't know this, and I've seen both the musical and the movie. Yeah. I guess I just forgot it.
We're going to have fun time.
Okay. But well, I do know that Joel was an avid listener of music, so... There are a few big key contributions that he had to this that tells you that. For starters, he said that the Lost Boys would really love the Doors, in his opinion. Yeah, you actually see Jim Morrison hanging up in the Lost Boys' little fort, their cave.
Yeah, their hideout, yeah.
Because of this... People Are Strange is also on the soundtrack, but not the original version, a re-recorded version by a band that Joel really liked, and he got the keyboardist for the Doors to be the one to produce this track.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so cool. God, that's awesome. What a great little connection. See, look at this. We're doing what we said we'd do in the podcast. We're finding connections. No, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. And speaking of connections, this movie, I talked a lot about how beautiful the night was in St. Elmo's Fire. And Joel is going crazy. He is allowed to basically photograph the nightlife of the Santa Cruz or Santa Clara boardwalk to absolute perfection. Like, you look at everything about it. This song is playing. There's the lights. There's the fairground. You have, the gayest people in California all congregating in a single area. You want to lose yourself in this world.
You know what's insane, right? So, obviously, the costume design was done by a Hollywood set.
Yeah.
According to Joel, when we see the people of California, just through the montages, like the people of Our Strange montage,
Yeah.
like that's just them. Like they just filmed actual California people,
and they know exactly what they want to do, because this is a thing that I think this movie is so enticing because of the way that they shoot everything about the boardwalk and everything about these people. I mean, at least for us, if it's enticing, but it's sinister, but it's like, oh, you want to reach out and you want to be there, even though you know that it's...
It feels like one of those things that should not exist.
Yeah.
But it was a real boardwalk. It is still a real boardwalk. It's probably changed since the 40 movies. It's probably changed since the 40 years since this movie came out.
Yeah.
Roughly.
But man, what an eye for aesthetics does Joel have. And that's something that, I mean, that's the thing about this movie that I will praise to high heaven is this movie it has everything people think is cool in an 80s movie. You know what
Absolutely.
I mean? Like, think about it. The music, the big hair, the outfits, the nightlife, the songs, the motorcycles, like monsters, blood, gore. This is everything that is cool. Like, you think about an 80s movie or at least a cliche of an 80s movie. And this has everything that people think is cool in their, like, parody 80s movies or fake 80s movies. And this movie has it. It has all of it, and it has so much more. And it is so cool for it.
I think if you were to sum up the 80s with one horror film, this might be it. Like, you are 100% correct.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
So... the opening does have the Lost Boys. I mentioned the costume design is insane. They managed to pull off graffiti jackets,
Yes.
which look absolutely fantastic on them. They look very recognizable. Absolutely hilarious that Alex Winters is here.
Oh, God, yeah.
I don't think there's any single person who can watch this movie and not think of Bill S. Preston.
Yeah.
Like, Bill S. Preston just became a vampire.
Yeah, it's just funny that he's here.
He got younger and then became a vampire.
But yeah, that's really cool. And also, speaking of memorable locations, not just the boardwalk, we also have Grandpa's taxidermy den and weed garden.
That is the main setting for the film. It was set. It is impressive how much that he makes the sets all come together, especially for the finale, which I don't want to get too much into that right now, but the way that they show you almost every single part of the house, and then eventually by the time that you get to the finale, you know where everything is, so that where there's like a big kind of chase scene in this house, like, you know exactly what room should be where. Absolutely.
And that's the really, really great thing about this movie, is that it's just, and this is something that I think you will see will serve Joel Schumacher very well in his future films that we talk about, especially when it comes to constructing Gotham. You need to know that this guy knows how to take a place and make it so full of life that it's not just real, it's hyper real. Which is like, ever since, I mean, one of my favorite conversations about film actually happened in Deadly Premonition 2, where Francis York Morgan talks about the term hyper real. And I have come to really find that I love the hyper real, because I feel that, you know, taking something that is not just real, but is so lived in and full of life and even a little exaggerated that it feels more real than reality, because it's allowed to be a little absurd, a little over the top, and a little fantastical, is something that Joel is going to be very good at, again, by the time he gets to Batman. So, you know,
again, we talked about how Joel was extremely modest during this one, yet if you listen to the commentary track, there's so much that he understood by this point that so many people don't really give them credit for, especially not the critics at the time. For starters, he wanted to save all of the real cool special effects for the end for two reasons. One, he didn't really have the budget for it. Two, it would just made the ending a lot more fantastical if that's the part where you're seeing people flying around and all that.
Yeah.
But that's why in the opening and like a few other scenes, they don't show the Lost Boys kill people. They just imply it. Like, for example, the security guard in the opening, they have them fly down and kill him from a POV shot.
Yeah, yeah.
And it works super well. Like it's one of those things that Joel was talking about, how what you can't see is even scarier.
Absolutely.
And like by that regard, he understands horror. He gets it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, and it's gorgeous. It really is such a gorgeous, gorgeous film. And everyone's wearing leather, and everyone's wearing cool belts. And then they hit you with the concert scene. I mean, we talked about, again, in St. Elmo's Fire, how one of my favorite scenes was that slow pan of the crowd in the bar as music was playing. And this, you get a whole concert scene to I Still Believe, as a guy is just shredding on a freaking saxophone, going absolutely crazy.
There was so much talk about how Joel would put things in specifically to pop himself. Like, for example, people argued that for the Batman and Robin nipples. I don't agree. We'll get into that one day. But, if you put in this entire scene for yourself, then you know what? Props to you. Like, you need to not be a coward. You need to put in fucking a shirtless saxophone guy if the scene rules. And this absolutely rules.
Oh,
You're 100%
absolutely
correct.
Rules. Oh my God, it rules. It is, again, I want to be there. I watch this and it's like, no wonder the surf punks were going crazy. Because holy moly, you want to talk again. This movie has everything cool, It shines a light on everything that is awesome. Why would I not want to watch this and be part of this?
While we're talking on the song, can I circle back a little bit to People Are Strange? Because I know I brought it up earlier with the Doors.
Yeah.
A few years back now, the movie Morbius came out. And I noticed the song People Are Strange in the trailer.
Oh, no.
Do you think that they added it because of the Lost Boys?
Well, listen, speaking of Morbius, at one point the Frog Brothers do say vamping out. So...
now that I think about it, it's very weird they didn't do... They made up a vampire hunting comic in the actual movie. I'm surprised they didn't just go ahead and put in Blade or... I don't know, like a Morbius comic.
Yeah.
Now that I'm thinking on it. It's not like that didn't exist.
We will have a lot of really cool things to talk about with comics, I'm sure. We'll have a little bit of an aside. But I just want to say the thing that I love about the concert scene, yes, it's awesome. But it's the same thing that he absolutely nailed with St. Elmo's Fire's bar scene, where everyone is having so much fun and the energy is just electric. Like, it comes through the screen.
By the way, did you know that scene had one of Joel's favorite shots of all time? He actually mentions this on the commentary. The scene where Star comes in through the crowd, he was so proud of that scene. He talked about how he just loved how it turned out.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, it's a hell of an introduction.
Sorry, tangent. Go ahead.
Oh, no, absolutely. No, that's great. Because, from there we transition to another incredible Schumacher location. Speaking to my heart, that video store, a wall of CRT televisions, every video you could want to rent. There's a funny mom there.
I love how there's cardboard TV sets around the register where the cashiers are. God damn, why can't we be this tacky again?
Yeah, I know. Come on. Why are things not this cool? Minimalism sucks.
And I think all we're talking about here, I think it really confirms one thing, which is having been to the West Coast now, I think this understands it more than any other film.
Yeah.
Shit just happens.
Shit just happens.
But, yeah, it was even cooler in The Lost Boys.
Yeah, The Lost Boys, I'm not even going to say, oh, it was cooler in the 80s. This isn't an 80s like universe. This is the Lost Boys. It's taking place in its own cool world. Now, you mentioned the comics, because we go to the comics, and great scene where we meet the best characters. Well, one of the many best characters, because this movie's full of cool characters.
I love the Frog Brothers.
The Frog Brothers are so funny. So the Coreys meet, and also the third guy.
So the Coreys are Corey Haim and Corey Feldman.
Mm-hmm.
Corey Haim is the brother. He is the one who is fashionable, like the fashionable young brother. He is also just loud as hell with it. Mm-hmm. And then you have the Corey Feldman and the other Frog brother. And
yeah, so just to kind of explain, because I feel like we glossed over it a little bit. Again, Jason Patrick and Corey Haim are new in town with their mother, single mother. They're living with their grandpa, who has the weed farm.
The Weed Farm, and also the Weed Brothers. The Weed Farm, and also these things called peanut butter poppers in his fridge, which I fucking want them.
Yeah.
Like, I saw them in... I just wanted to mention that. Oh my god. Like, bring that shit back.
Yeah. So I agree. So yeah, taxidermy, Weed Farm, peanut butter poppers. They moved to the grandpa's house on the West Coast, in the murder capital of the world. And so there's the little brother, who's kind of a hilarious little goofball, but also he gets in with the Frog Brothers at the comic shop because they're all a bunch of comic nerds. And that is when the Frog Brothers say, Santa Clara has a deep secret. Vampires! And give them a vampire comic. But before that happens, talk about it.
So, the Frog Brothers... They are absolutely in love with their characters. And you can tell.
Oh, yeah.
Joel gave them the direction to basically be military people. And they loved it. They're basically military kids who are very determined to hunt down and kill all vampires.
Oh, they are so
There's
funny.
a scene where Corey Haim mentions that he's picking out Batman 14. And Corey Feldman just goes, in like this deeply serious voice, "That's a serious comic book, man." Meanwhile, Corey Haim is set up to be like a comic nerd here. Beforehand, he talks about how they can't put the Superman 77s with the 200s because they haven't even discovered red kryptonite yet. And you can't put the 99s with the 300s. Lori Lamaris hasn't even been introduced yet. Turns out that is a mermaid, by the way. I looked it up later.
Yeah, you're the comic person. How accurate is this scene?
I did not look into the exact details of it. However, at the very least, it doesn't seem like it is wrong.
Do you think Joel put this part in for himself?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, this is probably the scene that earned him Batman Forever. Because I remember that Kevin Smith, on An Evening with Kevin Smith, joked that he got to write the Nick Cage Superman movie because during Mallrats he had like stupid comic discussions, and somebody from DC Comics would basically just watch this and go like, "Oh, this guy, this asshole knows
this guy knows
comics.
His comics.
Yeah. We'll make this idiot write the movie."
Yeah, fair. By the way, An Evening with Kevin Smith is coming out on Blu-ray, which is a crazy thing for them to do, but I had a lot of fun watching it in like 10 parts on YouTube once upon a time.
Me too. You mentioned the vampire comic. That was actually, as I mentioned, it was actually created for the movie. The original prop for this exists, and it was signed by the actual cast of this film.
Oh, cool. Where is it now? Do we know?
No clue. It's probably hanging up in some museum or maybe just a hardcore collector's house.
Movie Madness in Portland has the original Fight Club soap and a prop from Citizen Kane. I bet they could get this.
Absolutely.
Movie Madness in Portland. Hit us up. We love you guys. Yeah, speaking of comics, though, and speaking of Batman Forever, that is something that I think really shines about so much of this movie, is that it is very much a comic aesthetic kind of film.
Yeah.
And it lays so much of the groundwork for what will happen with Batman Forever, which I love.
I think between this and Flatliners, you can really tell why they went to Joel for directing Forever.
Yeah.
I think he had probably one of the most unique senses of style.
Because you needed someone to kind of marry sort of the comic book kind of heavily stylized, heavy color comic kind of style with the gothic architecture of the previous Burton films and Batman the Animated Series. And who is a guy who knows how to do both? There you go.
It is extremely...
But we're not on the Batman episode.
Next time
on Dragon Ball Z.
So the Markiplier looking ass that's in the opening gets killed.
Yes. They kill him. Those damn Lost Boys. They killed Markiplier. So
that's all I really had to say there.
Yep. So that's something that, like, here's the thing that it's like every side character is so charming and funny to me. And that is why I think the Lost Boys and Jason Patric's character...
God, that happened with the last movie, too. St. Elmo's Fire, huh?
Yeah.
Our favorite character was the roommate who has, like, one scene, like, 2 lines.
Well, I mean, I'll say this. I think the way that Joel has done this in both is that there is an intentional dichotomy between the two sides of your life, I guess. In that we have the A plot and the B plot. And in the A plot, you have the fall to darkness of a lot of very serious characters. And in the B plot, you kind of have comic relief. You have sort of over-the-top nature.
The Frog Brothers, who has the kids who watch Escape from New York way too young and it fucked up their life.
I get it.
And then you have the Lost Boys, who they watch, like, 50s biker movies and, like, yeah, we can be this.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. And so you kind of have this dichotomy going on. And that's something I loved Jason Patric's performance because he's kind of a tough guy, but you really feel kind of that sweetness to him. And I think that is one of the things that makes this movie work as he falls in with the Lost Boys.
That was exactly why Joel casted him, too. Like, he was talking about why he needed Patrick to be the guy. Apparently, like, Jason Patric to him, he found him and he just felt like this guy would be perfect because he has, like, a sentimental big brother quality to him. And you understand it completely. Like, you're right.
And this is pretty much one of the most incredible just, like, stretches of the entire film. Probably one of my favorite stretches of, well, it's hard to say, but one of my favorite stretches of almost any film is when Michael, that's Jason Patric's character, meets David and gets kind of lured into this gang. By the way, Michael and David, interesting, 2 angel names. So that's another kind of thing where, that's something that you look into a lot of. Joel Schumacher has a lot of really interesting relationships, I think, with classical Christianity and symbols. I haven't looked too deep into it, but again, we go back to Flatliners taking place in a big Gothic church. Interesting stuff. So Michael and David. So Michael is tempted by the Lost Boys in this absolutely beautiful, again, oh my God, the nighttime scene here. The scene where they're all driving their motorcycles and jumping over sticks, and you just see through the fog the headlights, and they're on the railroad tracks, and it's one of the most famous shots. It's the one that they had again on the DVD or the Blu-ray menu and the 4K slipcover of them, hanging on to the bottom of this bridge, telling Michael,
they literally get Michael to jump off a bridge because everybody is doing it.
Yeah, it's so good. Let go, Michael.
Man, there's so many things that I love about this stretch because you are absolutely right.
I love that the music. Oh my God, the music.
So everybody knows that how you become a vampire, you drink a vampire's blood. I can't believe that this is the first instance I've seen where the drinking of blood is done in a bottle.
Yes. And it's
like an alcohol bottle.
Yes. How far are you willing to go, Michael? And this scene, everything about this. They go to the Lost Boys Club. There's the picture of Jim Morrison. It's under this ruined resort. It is an other world. You are crossing through a gateway into a completely different world that you will never see again. And you are given this blood. And this is it. This is the part of the movie, because this is the gayest vampire shit I've seen since Nosferatu sucked that dude's fingers. I am telling you, he gives him a bottle of his blood. He gives him a bottle of his bodily fluids and makes him drink it in this whole other world full of bunch of gay people. And it's like, how far are you willing to go? How far are you willing to change yourself, Michael? Are you willing to take this next step and put this to your lips and make me part of you? What the hell? What the fuck, Joel?
How did Kiefer understand the assignment so well, too?
Oh my God.
Keep in mind, I want to say this here. He was just over 20. This is 1 year after his breakthrough performance on Stand By Me. He destroys this role. There's no way that you could ever do this character again without him. And he is such a likable douche.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he's like if George Michael was a vampire and also insufferable.
Oh my God.
That's David Powers.
It's so good. David Powers is so good. Kiefer is so good.
The scene where he, like before this, he also uses hypnotism powers in order to trick Michael into thinking that the Chinese food he's eating is worm and maggots. And that's just like general fucking with him before he's like, okay, no, join us.
Yes, exactly. And it is so good. And the scene, because again, oh my God, this scene, he puts that bottle of blood to his lips and drinks it, and Cry Little Sister is playing as there's fire and fade outs, and it's just panning around Michael, and just it is stunning. It is absolutely stunning. It is one of the like seminal pieces of like this idea of going into this subculture, into this queer subculture, and like becoming part of it, because you know that the moment you put that bottle to your mouth, everything is going to change. And are you ready for that?
So it's funny, 1987 had this and Near Dark. I would say that they are kind of parallels of sort of the same movie. Mm-hmm. And I do think that they're both based on 50s biker movies, where kind of a man falls in with the wrong crowd and it turns on them. There's usually like a breakdown of the gang afterwards. Right. That's one of the things I was really impressed with as soon as you mentioned Roger Ebert's quote, because I know exactly what he's referring to, like all these troubled kid kind of films.
Yeah.
And
I was a teenage werewolf.
If you want to see something that's a little more Western, a little more romantic, I think you go to Near Dark. This is a little more sensational and 80s, still romantic. Yeah. But also, this one has a lot more of kind of a colorful queer vibe. And I love it.
So much more homoerotic, because as he's drinking this blood, like David is just moaning Michael's name the entire time. He's going, Michael, and it is just like, and that's what leads to the bridge scene. He's like, you're one of us, Michael. Man. You can let go, Michael, you're one of us. And it's like, oh my God, like
my heart.
My heart. Woo! What a fucking film.
Oh man. So that was the Michael initiation. He does wake up the next day, quote unquote, hungover.
Yeah, he lets go from the bridge, and it cuts to him landing in his bed, and it is awesome. And his brother Sam, who is one of the Coreys, is very funny in this movie. I can't believe that they made a kid funny, but they absolutely did. With him like doing the whole concerned parent thing.
God, so there are so many parts in this, like right as we get to the reveal where he figures out that his brother
Mm-hmm.
Michael is a vampire. I loved that he has a boombox by the bathtub.
I was going to say that.
Singing.
I wrote the same thing. He has a boombox in the bathroom.
That is such a dangerous thing, but also extremely funny how he's just singing it.
Yeah. And that's the other like really cool kind of follow up to all of this. Not only is it the drinking of the blood, but it's then his brother realizes that something has changed, that he's different. And, you know, yes. And Michael goes to, you know, thinks about, you know, drinking his brother's blood and fights it and goes back. And Sam's like, you know, what the fuck? You're different. You're changed. You're one of them, aren't you? And
my own brother, a shit-sucking vampire. You wait till Mom finds out, buddy.
Yes, that. And Michael is like begging Sam not to tell the parents, and that he's not that different just because he's a vampire now. Motherfucker. Dude, you might as well be saying, you know, I can't believe my brother... I can't finish that sentence. We'll get kicked off of iTunes. But he might as well have called him a slur, okay?
Yes.
Like, he might as well have... Like, and Michael is like begging. It's like, no, just because I'm like this doesn't mean I'm not your brother. And it's like, holy shit. It's not subtle. It's not subtle. And it's amazing. I mean, yes, by the end of the movie, it's a vampire movie and it's wrong crowd movie and there are a million ways to interpret it. It's gonna get muddy.
Vampires are definitely a representation of the evils of society.
Yeah,
in this,
yeah. And it's like, you know, there's gonna be muddy. It's gonna get muddied by the end. There's gonna be 1,000 ways to say it. But holy shit, the queer reading of everything about this movie from the start to this part is unbelievable, and I love it.
So I once had a discussion with you about how it was crazy to me that near the end of the 80s and all throughout the 90s and early 2000s, it felt like the vampire genre just hit a fucking boom.
Yeah.
There was, I mentioned, Near Dark, there was Fright Night, there was Interview with the Vampire.
And it's funny because
Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Interview with the Vampire was enough of a big thing, the book, by the time this movie came out, that Roger Ebert in his text review for this movie actually name dropped it as like an example of like a really strong vampire story. But continue.
The screenwriter actually was inspired to write this after reading Interview with the Vampire. Talked about it. So
what do you know?
So, you know, and that was the G-rated version too. But anyways, yeah, I remember that like the first thing that came out of your mouth was, it was because of AIDS, isn't it? And it was like, yeah.
God.
It's one of those things that vampires, at least from the 80s onwards, has been... it's always been queer, but it became even more queer once, you know, there was kind of this fear of a transmittable disease.
God, and I just remembered the line of Michael, and you want to talk about why... You know,
it's both
Jason
amazing
Patrick
and heartbreaking.
Is so good at this is because he's both the tough guy and he has this in him where he's just like begging Sam. It's like, you know, I'm your brother, Sammy. Help me, please. You know, just don't tell Mom anything. Like, holy shit, woo! Thank you, Joel. Thank you for the food. I love you, buddy. Rest in peace. There's just so much stuff. There's like just this begging of just like this confusion as to his identity after doing this. It's something that I can definitely relate to, you know, in my own kind of process of self-realization of every time I had kind of a major revelation, just this sort of like bargaining with myself, like, what does this mean? Where am I and who am I? And I don't get it, you know? And it is, you know, something that I struggle with. And it's like, so I love how just so tenderly and so emotionally it is portrayed in this movie because of, you know, how Joel just does not at any point shy away from kind of that exaggerated emotion that makes this movie work. So
Joel had actually talked about how the tone of this movie could be seen in this part where we get the vampire reveal followed by the joke about you wait till mom finds out, buddy.
Yeah.
They would hit you with, because of the fact this is horror and comedy, they would hit you with horror and then immediately kind of hit you again to remind you that it is a comedy.
I forgot how funny this movie was until this rewatch, because so much of my mind was I remembered some funny parts. I remembered the Frog Brothers. I remember the Holy Water, but so much of it in my head was so wrapped up in all the Cry Little Sister scenes or the finale.
Actually, analyzing this movie was fascinating because, I've watched this movie several times. This was the first time that I noticed that, so obviously the Frog Brothers, they're at this comic store whenever we see them.
Mm-hmm.
If you actually look in the background, their parents are always there. They're like a couple of hippies, and they always seem to be asleep.
God.
That is absolutely kind of the tone. He really did think about everything with this. Down to the fact that, I mentioned the Doors connection earlier. He talked about why. He actually explains it in the commentary around this time when we see Jim Morrison on the wall, why he did it. And he just felt like, they would resonate with the nihilism in the lyrics.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's just so charming. I forget sometimes that I love audio commentaries.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But Joel was such a comforting voice while listening to this.
I used to love,
you understand everything with it.
Yeah, I used to listen to audio commentaries all the time. DVDs, I had Holes, and I would listen to the Holes audio commentary, both tracks, just constantly as a kid.
Not to transition out of this, I do feel like we should probably move this along.
I want to say one thing, because we're getting up to this. Another Joel Schumacher expert. My man, you could shoot a goddamn sex scene.
We are 2 for 2 in insanely passionate sex scenes.
Yes.
So we had a reoccurring theme with the Chris Farley series. Nudity, brotherly love. Joel so far is fucking, and I respect it.
Sure. Absolutely, Joel. Good job. Let me tell you, Star...
I'll be surprised. Yeah, I don't remember Phantom of the Opera. I'll be shocked if they manage to add an even sexier...
I don't think there's a sex scene in 2004's Phantom of the Opera.
Well, there might be in the number 23.
We haven't seen it. But no, yeah, Star and Michael, what a scene. Very, very good sex scene. Very cool. Really just passionate. And it's also really unnerving because there's this gorgeous shot of the clouds as Cry Little Sister is playing again. And it zooms.
How many times do they use it? And every time it works, it plays
works every
4 or
time.
5 times, and it always rules.
Listen, move over. The Sound of Silence used in The Graduate has nothing on this. They can use this song 3 or 4 times, and it works every time. But yeah, they zoom into the cave, and it's such a great, gorgeous shot because it's super unnerving. It's creepy. That's the thing. There's a lot of just great, creepy shit in this movie. I loved that. And then we get a very, 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 very good bit.
Are we going to talk about the scene that made surf punks go insane?
Okay, let's go. Talk about the surf punks.
So, there's a campfire scene that happens over Run DMC's and Aerosmith's Walk This Way.
Incredible.
It is such an insane pick because, you associate that song with just, fun times. It was kind of the song of the summer.
It was the prom song.
Yeah, it was that we're having fun and having a party scene. Anyways, let's go massacre people during it.
Okay, and I just want to talk about how gorgeous everything in this movie is because of the backlighting. What I love is that there's always a layer of fog over so much of this movie, and through the fog there are these beams of light. And in the campfire scene, everything is backlit in this orange glow, and it is gorgeous as they're come on, Michael, we gotta eat. And it's so cool.
They have, and this is the first time I think we really see the Lost Boys makeup.
Yeah.
I wanted to bring that up because if you look at the look of vampires from the 90s and 2000s after this. Like, Near Dark does not have this style of vampire. Fright Night does not have this style of vampire. Other 90s stuff take from The Lost Boys. If you look at Buffy the Vampire Slayer, how they put every single vampire's face, that is straight out of The Lost Boys.
That's this movie.
Interview with the Vampire, too. Like, that was just kind of the thing. They managed to nail how a vampire's face should look. It's classic, but also it does manage to be frightening. They get kind of a face transformation whenever they go into vampire.
When they're frenzying, to use a World of Darkness term, which also, by the way, in World of Darkness, there is a vampire clan based on the Lost Boys, of course.
Of course.
But yeah, I want to also back up just a little bit, talking one last thing about kind of the whole like queerness and allegory. There is a scene after the scene with Star and the sex scene where the mother is just sort of, she does that thing where it's like, you can tell me anything. And it's like,
she is so adorable. Probably top 10 horror movie moms.
Oh yeah, we love her. And then that's when we get the dinner scene, which is absolutely hilarious, where the Frog Brothers and Sam decide, you know what time it is? I'll tell you what time it is. It's time to hunt the head vampire, who they're convinced is the video store owner.
The Frog Brothers fucking kill me.
Oh,
like,
God,
they're funny from the first scene with, like, the serious comic book shit. They never stop being funny. They start saying shit like, El Vampiro. They're like, they somehow stuck Beavis and Butthead characters in this movie and made it work.
Oh, man. But before we do that, talking about the campfire, there's the scene. You'll never grow old. And you'll never die, but you must feed. What a line. What a delivery. Man, Kiefer, 20 years old. Isn't that crazy? So, on the subject, and that's the thing, is like the tempting of the bloodshed and how it tempts Michael. He has to give in to these feelings. And after the frenzy, how he goes to Sam, it's, I know who I am now, Sam. Like, what a line. Speaking of, I mentioned it earlier, speaking of the Frog Brothers, when they mention it, it's like, man, these guys will vamp out, and this is right when Morbius fever was like a big thing and people talk about morbing out, and I was just losing my shit the first time I watched this back in 2022, because that was the first time I watched it, so. Vamping out.
I'm sorry, I don't really have much to add on this line.
Always funny. But from there we get to, there's the banquet. There's a very funny bit where they're trying to capture the head of the video store because they think he's the head vampire. And where the video store owner says, well, are you going to invite me in? Oh, what a great scene. It's such a good joke. Also...
Yeah, if you know anything about lore, then you might have been able to catch this. I know the first time that I watched this, it is something that I noticed.
Yeah.
That was like all the way back in 2007, early 2008. Maybe it was more pop culture by then, but, at the time, it was, like, the whole thing was meant to catch you off guard. I think it did work.
Yeah, absolutely. You're supposed to invite the vampire in, of course.
But also, they kind of change.
Just funny.
I want to say they do change up the lore just a little bit. I swear to God. So I guess should we jump into what is going to be kind of the twist later on, or hold off on it?
I think that in order to analyze this again, we kind of tell everyone, hey, you probably want to watch these movies, yourself if you haven't already. We're gonna dive into, what can be considered spoiler territory. I don't think it takes anything away from the movie by knowing this. because it's not, subtle, but we'll jump into this. Let's talk about the twist.
So it was weird to me because I remember seeing that and I was like, okay, so obviously he's a vampire. He needs to be invited into the house. Have you heard of any version of that lore in which inviting a vampire into the house also robbed them of the curses of being a vampire?
No. I mean, it works for this movie, and it's fine, but it's definitely a non-standard vampire thing. Because normally it's just like they can't enter unless you invite them, but now it's like, well, you invited me, so, I love garlic now.
So let me just ask a question. Maybe I'm thinking about this too hard. Let's say you invite that a vampire is in your house, they are about to bite you, and then you yell at them, I invite you in. Does that mean that they can't, eat you?
That's the thing. I think it just robs them of their weaknesses, but not their normal powers.
It's hard to tell.
Yeah.
It is one of those things that's I don't know if they thought about it super hard, but it works, I guess, for the twist of the film, and I think it helps that the Frog Brothers respond to the reveal with, well, yeah, everybody knows that if you invite a vampire, it loses its powers. I mean, come on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So,
but that's getting a little bit ahead.
Because
I actually want to talk about before we even get to that reveal. There is so much that goes into the actual setup. The actual setup for the finale, which is incredible.
There are scenes in that setup that leave me breathless because there's a whole scene of David.
I'll tell you, one of them that leaves me breathless is the scene where they steal the holy water from the church, because that had me laughing too hard the first time I saw it.
The Frog Brothers, the Frog Brothers and Sam are like, okay, we gotta work together let's kill all the vampires because this is what we were meant to do. And they bust into a church while a baptism is being taken place and just stick a canteen in a vat of holy water, and they're like, thanks guys, sorry guys,
Now, the funniest part about it to me is right as they're about to leave, one of the Frog Brothers, the one leading the end, just turns around, wants to fist pump them, and in the middle of church to just say thanks guys, and everybody else they're not even commenting on it. They're like, oh, the fucking Frog Brothers,
it's those darn Frog Brothers again.
Man, that is fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
There's the scene where, before we actually get to the finale, you could argue that the hero team actually draws first blood.
Yeah.
At least between the two teams, because they come to the Lost Boys' house with the intention, the cave.
Yeah, the cave.
With the intention of killing them.
And they stab Alex Winters.
They stab Bill S. Preston. It's worth mentioning, all the Lost Boys hang from the ceiling like bats, which I thought was a fantastic twist on it.
That's such a cool little detail where they're hanging from the ceiling, in the cave, sleeping upside down. It's awesome.
It makes so much sense, to be honest. I think things from the 90s even stole from that. I don't think it's Little Monsters. There was something from the 90s. Maybe I'm thinking of Little Nicky that I watched as a kid. No, Little Nicky is the Adam Sandler thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
I don't know. There was some kid vampire movie from the late 90s that I absolutely remembered. The only thing I really remember is it was set in Scotland.
Was it a Disney Channel original movie?
No.
Okay.
All I remember is there was a little. There was a vampire boy, and then the main character, I think, was some kind of blonde kid with glasses.
A little vampire boy. Anyway, but basically, it stole from this movie.
Yeah.
So I guess we got the G-rated funny vampire movie after all.
Right as Alex Winters is stabbed, we see Kiefer Sutherland yell out, "You're dead meat!" Shouts to the Dead Meat podcast.
Shouts to Dead Meat. We hope you hear this one day.
Doubt, but you know. It's fine. Build up to the finale at the house is just in general, fantastic.
Yeah.
And then
So there is one part where it kind of slows down, where it's like, that they're going to rescue Star from the big bad vampires, but also we have to rescue the kid, Laddie.
we didn't even mention Laddie. He's on a
milk carton.
He's on a milk carton earlier on.
It's a great shot. It's a great setup where it's like, have you seen this boy? And it's like a milk carton kid, and then you realize he's one of the vampires because he's just a kid. There's probably something you can unpack about, like, we got to rescue the innocent ones from the big bad evils, but it's like, it's just a general 80s thing. It's not really worth looking too deep into.
Apparently in the G-rated cut of The Lost Boys, Star was kind of like another like young boy, which I don't think there was like a romantic relationship thing, but like to them, like Star and Laddie were just kind of friends.
Yeah, so whatever.
So, but like it is like that was kind of their connection, and then from there, we don't really know exactly why Star is so protective of Laddie. They're just kind of she is trying to take care of him because he's the youngest. He is,
and now
kind of
I could be cynical here and talk about how it forms the perfect beautiful heterosexual family by the end, but we're not going to go there.
No.
I love this movie too much. I just do that as a joke. Speaking, this is the scene where there's just something about this shot of the boardwalk with the blue of the ocean and David getting ready to like launch his counterattack. And it's so rhythmic and just beautiful that I could feel my breath catching in my throat just watching it.
Yeah, you can exactly see why they wanted a music video director.
Yeah.
To direct this movie, because you're right, it does have such like a great rhythm to it.
And that's the thing. I would say that the third reel, here's something that I understand. I do understand, the complaint that the third reel is a big action set piece. But I don't agree that it loses the humanity, because I don't think any of this would be nearly as effective if it was not for that personal relationship between David and Michael.
Absolutely.
That leads to their final confrontation. And
it's triangulation between them and Star, literally.
Yep, absolutely. And then it's a blast. Oh my God, the climax is awesome. It's everything you could want. There are fountains of blood. There's a dog
that jumps on a vampire.
Yeah, and shoves a bathtub full of holy water to burn him alive. It's funny as hell.
Oh, man. And I was mentioning that they set up everything perfectly for the ending. I didn't even mention, like, there's a chandelier that they swing from that's very well set up. There is, and then the big thing, right? We've been talking about taxidermy. The very first time that you see the taxidermy revealed, you get like a whole room that is just full of antlers.
Yeah.
While they're killing off every single vampires, the one thing that gets David, we open up the room that they saw that had the original taxidermy reveal, and what do you know? The antlers actually is the thing that stabs David through the heart, killing him.
Yes.
And it was, I took a moment afterwards thinking like, wow, they set that up perfectly.
Yeah, they set up so much. And that's something that, this movie could have only worked if you had such a strong sense of place of everything in this house, because every single part of the house is used so well. We get a head explosion. In this movie. It's great. And like all of this great stuff is happening. Of course, before David is killed, we do get the incredible scene of Michael and David. Michael is says, are you afraid to face me? And David says, I tried to make you immortal. Michael replies, you tried to make me a killer. And David just goes, you are a killer. And it's just the charged dialogue there. Oh my God, the emotion. And again, it would not work if not for the rest of the movie.
So before we get to the finale there,
God,
they kill off David, and that is when
I'm not done.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Because, oh my God, Cry Little Sister hits for the last time as they're fighting, and it's so good. And
it fades out.
I
remember.
And they're saying, "Stop fighting me, Michael. It's too late. My blood is in your veins." And it's so good. It's so good. And like in Cry Little Sister, oh my God, the way that it fades out with the children's choir saying, "Thou shalt not fall, thou shalt not kill." Holy shit.
The fact that the only way he was able to beat the Lost Boys was by finally killing David.
Yes.
His first kill ended up being David, of all things. Was just perfect storytelling.
Oh my God.
Honestly.
It's so gay.
Great G-rated comedy.
Yeah. Good little Goonies-esque comedy, guys.
So that is when, well, like we mentioned it earlier, the twist. The video store owner, by the way, was named Max. I don't think it was the comic store owner.
No, it was the video store
Yeah.
owner.
So,
because the Frog Brothers own the comic shop.
Yes.
Possibly.
They're their parents.
Yeah, their parents.
So we see Max's face as he sees David killed. And it's funny, we mentioned the twist here. Joel talked about on the commentary track about how most people, until the reveal, actually thought that Grandpa was going to be the head vampire. I never thought that in any
I never thought that, but that's kind of funny.
He was too much of like a,
that's kind of a
jokester character.
Yeah.
We do get a twist with him in a moment.
Oh, it's great.
But anyways, we see Max's face as he sees like David killed. We get the reveal that he is Dork Dracula. And he was trying to get the mother to be the mother of the Lost Boys.
Yes, and basically sire an entire vampire town, and it's so good. And this is the thing, is because we had Max versus versus Michael as like the really charged emotional fight.
David versus Michael.
We had David. Sorry, you're right. David versus Michael is the charged emotional fight, and that's when we get Max as like the last boss, and he's the funny one.
Yeah,
because,
absolutely.
Oh my God, this scene is hilarious. Like we got the horror, and now we have the comedy, and that's the thing. It's like you said. That's the kind of the MO of the entire movie is we get the horror, and then we get the comedy because it's a horror comedy, and we got the horror with David versus Michael, and now we're getting the comedy with Max versus Sam and Michael and the Frog Brothers and Grandpa's Jeep and
yep, and then everybody has to come together to beat Max. Oh wait, no, never mind.
Yeah,
so even I was talking about how they set up everything very well. There was one thing that is set up and not touched up upon until the very end, and then it hits. We constantly talk about the car.
Yes.
So Grandpa's car, Grandpa had been avoiding Max the entire time. Also didn't like going into town, didn't like having new guests. I guess these are kind of the hints towards maybe he's the vampire.
Right.
But, it feels like if you were a vampire, you'd want to go into town more.
Yeah.
Just saying. But either way, the Grandpa makes a big deal that he doesn't actually drive the car into town.
Mm-hmm.
And also, Grandpa doesn't want the kids touching his car.
Right.
So, the car runs over Max.
Oh, God, it's great.
In order to kill him.
It's so funny.
And then as soon as he does it, he walks right over to his fridge where they set up the old man shelf that had the peanut butter poppers I was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And we get one final line as he goes to the fridge, turns around after opening up a soda, and says the final line of the movie.
Yeah.
One thing about Santa Carla I never could stomach. All the damn vampires.
It's such a like. I challenge you to find a better last line. Like there are some out there, but that has got to be top 10. What a film!
God damn!
What a movie!
I love the still. By the way, did you know that there was apparently a still of Molly Ringwald from The Breakfast Club that I didn't even recognize, but it was mentioned in the end credits. Which
speaking of the end credits, you are absolutely right. Can I just quickly say my last note on this movie is there are 5 surf Nazis credited in this movie. There was surf Nazi number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. I didn't notice any surf Nazis.
They were probably in the video store for Surf Nazis Must Die, the film. Like, there was probably, they had to credit them. It's probably the same thing with Molly Ringwald.
Yeah, the Surf Nazis.
God, do you think the Surf Nazis actually was the group with Markiplier in it? The Markiplier
the Markiplier guy. They were Surf Nazis. Anyway, that's hilarious. But Molly Ringwald in The Breakfast Club.
It's funny that we get another Brad Pack connection. It was kind of like just Joel winking at himself like, hey, I made that.
Yeah. It's so funny. Like what a weird thing. It was a very funny thing for us to notice in the credits. Talk about connections.
Yep.
Yeah.
Probably one of my favorite 80s movies.
Oh my god.
Absolutely one of my favorite horror films.
One of my favorite movies of all time.
All the set design, costume design decisions we were praising with St. Elmo's Fire. It comes together here. You all get new creative direction, brilliant lighting, grandeur sense of scale.
Man,
it made him like perfect for this picture.
Oh my god, the queer reading, the fact that it's just a fun film that just...
This truly is, I think, Joel's masterpiece in a lot of ways. And I gotta be honest, I think if this movie showed one thing, I love you to death, Joel. Don't write your own films anymore.
Yeah.
Like...
you can edit others.
Yeah, no, he took this script and he ran with it, and that is perfectly fine. He was the director, and he can go ahead and do that. People didn't like how the cast in St. Elmo's Fire turned out to be assholes.
Yeah.
And, he wasn't the only writer in that. I'm going to give fair credit there.
Of course.
But
everything
turned out a lot better when he was just... sticking to the director's chair.
Yeah, absolutely. And God, what a film that was.
Fucking love this movie. If I was to make a musical of a single horror film, it would probably be this film or Hellraiser.
Oh my goodness. Man. So keep an eye out for that. Now that we've put out in the world, we're going to make it happen.
One day.
One day. Oh my God. I mean, I think I've said everything, like, in my gushing excitement. I think I've said a little bit of everything that I've wanted to say about this movie, which is amazing because there's not a time that goes by that I don't want to talk about this movie. We're going to be putting together for a vacation a bunch of horror movies for a friend, and there's a part of me that's just like, well, why don't we just put this one on and watch this yet again? That's how much I liked watching it this time. Like, what a movie. What a movie. Oh my God. Yeah,
that was The Lost Boys.
That was The Lost Boys. And yeah, I mean, as I'm sure you have gathered, we loved it. Probably my favorite movie that we've talked about on the podcast so far. I mean, I love Tommy Boy, of course.
I love both this film and Tommy Boy.
And, yeah,
I will say, if we were talking about
Beverly Hills Ninja,
if I was talking about what's probably the best made film, it might be this one. Tommy Boy has a lot of sentimental, nostalgic value.
Yeah, absolutely. But man, what a great movie.
Beowulf does not.
No Beowulf. So that has been The Lost Boys. I have been Aaron. That has been Mandy, and you have been listening to Roll Credits. Remember that you can listen on the podcast streaming app of your choice. Go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're on YouTube. Go to Armbar Studios on YouTube. Go to armbarstudios.com. Grab our RSS feed. Slap that baby into your favorite podcast reader. I use Pocket Casts. Keep an eye out for anything that we're going to be doing. Of course, next week
We have Falling Down.
Falling Down, which I think is also going to be a very, very fun one. So next episode, keep an eye out for that. Check out your favorite movies. Movies are good. Watch them. And so we'll see you later. Until then.
3, 2, 1. Roll credits.
You did me!
Roll Credits is produced by Armbar Studios and is part of the Aaron and Mandy Network. The intro and outro music is provided by Daniel Vodovos, available on Bandcamp. For more information on all of our projects, visit armbarstudios.com.